If it's right that there are only a handful of plots for the stories human beings tell each other, one of them has to be the pattern of finding, losing, and finding again. Relationships are created, they're broken, they're put together again. And some of the most powerful stories of this kind involve moments of shocking and unexpected recognition. The person you thought was a stranger, even an enemy, turns out to be the long-lost parent or child or lover. A moment of recognition like this is life-changing. It's not surprising that writers and musicians are compulsively drawn to stories like this, and that they put the best of their energies into representing them. In The Magic Flute, Mozart signals the reunion of the lovers Tamino and Pamina, first by an excited and rapid musical bustle of expectation, then a brief but eloquent moment of silence, followed by two ecstatic and serene solo lines, expressive of complete homecoming and fulfillment. Tamino and Pamina are about to face an ordeal which may mean death. Their coming together allows them to confront this with a confidence that can't be shaken by the possible depth of suffering ahead of them. Something similar can be found in fiction, too. If you watched War and Peace earlier this year, you'll remember the moment when Natasha, fleeing from the French occupation of Moscow with her family, discovers that her former fiancé, Prince Andrei, is traveling in the same convoy, wounded and near death. They've parted with great pain and bitterness, and here is a miraculous opportunity on the very brink of death for something new to happen, even if the final separation is inevitable. This is how Tolstoy describes their meeting in the novel.
When he came round, there was Natasha, the very living Natasha that of all people in the world he was dying to love, with that newly revealed, pure, divine love, down on her knees before him. He knew it was the real, living Natasha, and this came as no surprise. He was quietly happy. Natasha was kneeling, terrified but rooted to the spot. She couldn't have moved a muscle, gazing at him and trying so hard not to sob. Her pale face showed no movement other than a slight tremor in her lips and chin. Prince Andrei gave a sigh of relief, smiled and held out his hand. "Is it you?" he said. "Real happiness." In one quick movement, Natasha carefully shuffled up closer, still on her knees, and took his hand equally carefully, bending her face down over it, kissing it, caressing it with her lips. "Oh, please forgive me," she whispered, looking up and glancing at him. "Please do forgive me." "I love you," said Prince Andrei. "Forgive? What is there to forgive?" asked Prince Andrei. "Forgive me for what I did to you," Natasha murmured in a barely audible, broken whisper, and she kissed his hand more and more, covering it with caresses from her lips. "I love you, darling, more than I did, better than before," said Prince Andrei, lifting her face with his hand so he could look her in the eyes. Those eyes, brimming with happy tears, were gazing at him with gentle compassion and the joy of love. Natasha's pale, thin face with its puffy lips was worse than unattractive. It looked terrible. But Prince Andrei couldn't see her face. He saw only the glittering eyes, and they were beautiful.
I'm not even going to comment on all of that, Rowan. It was so bizarre. You're completely mad. You're completely mad. Actually, I will say something. I don't know what you mean about complete homecoming and fulfilment, because I'm quite at home where I am living now. And if you're talking about complete homecoming and fulfilment in the Church of England, you've got to be completely mad. You really have. I was never at home in the Church of England. I was just passing through, and I think I'll be staying right where I am, thank you. So don't hold any delusions about that. You've lost the plot. Honestly, you really have. Well, just think, if you hadn't made my life such complete and utter hell in the Church of England, I might have fonder memories of it than I do. So that's not the only reason I wasn't at home there, but it's a big part of the reason. So you've only got yourself to blame, haven't you, with all your evil behaviour? You're completely mad. You're a complete lunatic. Anyway, oh yes, it's the 4th of April now. I ought to tell you when it is. It's the 4th of April and it's just after midnight. And obviously I'm making you my usual video at the end of the weekend to reassure you I haven't been seducing any priests. So you can relax. Anyway, I am going to talk about something else you said in this broadcast that was broadcast on BBC Radio 4 this morning, which was the 3rd of April. This was the first broadcast of it. I don't know when you recorded it, but I'm guessing it's a little while ago. Anyway, you do go on later on in this broadcast to talk about the reunion, the reconciliation of Jacob and Esau in the book of Genesis chapter 33. Genesis chapter 33. Now I have made a whole video about this before entitled The Deceiver to explain this story to you, but I am going to explain it to you again because you obviously still don't understand it. And what's more, you've got no intention of understanding it. But I'm going to explain it to you again because I'm all heart. So anyway, just to summarise the story, Jacob and Esau are twin brothers. Esau is the elder brother, so he should have had the inheritance and he should have had his father's blessing, but he sold his inheritance for a pot of soup. He sold it to Jacob for this pot of soup, and later on he tricked his father into giving him Esau's blessing. His father was very old and nearly blind, so he didn't realise it was the wrong son. Jacob told him that he was Esau, and Esau was out hunting at the time. So that's what happened, and Esau was very angry that Jacob had stolen his blessing, deceived his father out of his blessing. So Jacob had to run off and stay away for a long time, and while he was away he got married and had children and built up a lot of livestock and so on and made a good life for himself. But he wanted to be reconciled with his brother, so he decided to go back and be reconciled with Esau. Now before, and I have explained this to you before, but I'm going to explain it to you again because you clearly don't understand it, or you don't want to understand it, and you think if you keep repeating the same old crap to me over and over again, you're going to manipulate a different outcome. But I keep telling you that I'm not your mother and you're not going to manipulate me, and I know what crap you talk, so you're wasting your time really. So anyway, the day before Jacob met with Esau, he spent the night wrestling with God, and he was first reconciled with God, and I'm going to read this part of the story out. This is the part you've missed out. This is also the part that you missed out last time as well. So there's a consistency in how you misrepresent this story of the reconciliation of Jacob and Esau. So I'm just going to read the part immediately preceding this, which is in Genesis chapter 32, beginning at verse 22. I've already read this to you and explained it before, but I'll do it again. The same night he got up, this is Jacob, and took his 2 wives, his 2 maids, and his 11 children, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream, and likewise everything that he had. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he struck him on the hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for the day is breaking." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." So he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." Then the man said, "You shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with humans, and have prevailed." Then Jacob asked him, "Please tell me your name." But he said, "Why is it that you ask my name?" And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "For I have seen God face to face, and yet my life is preserved." And Peniel means the face of God. I'll come on to that in a minute. But I have explained this before, that he's wrestling with this stranger who turns out to be God, and he wants a blessing from God, and God won't bless him until he tells him his name, his real identity, which is Jacob, Yaakov in Hebrew, which means deceiver. Now Jacob is a deceiver, it's his identity. He deceived his father into giving him a blessing that was intended for his brother, and this was the cause of the great rift between them. And so until Jacob had recognised the wrong that he'd done to his brother by being a deceiver, then there could be no reconciliation. So Jacob was first reconciled with God, and he confessed his true identity to God, Yaakov, deceiver, and then God blessed him, and Jacob was transformed by this, and this is represented in the giving of a new name, Israel, Yisrael, which means he wrestles with God. So that is what happened before Jacob even went to meet with Esau, that he'd accepted his nature as a deceiver, and this was what had caused the great rift and the offence between him and Esau in the first place. So he had to do that first, and then he went to meet with Esau. Now, I'm not going to read all this passage out because I'm going to play the clip where you're talking about it, and then you do have someone else reading out this passage, but I am going to comment on one or two things in it. Now, you say that Esau had kind of forgotten all about the wrong that Jacob had done to him in the past. It was just like it had all been swept under the carpet, and he'd forgotten about it, and it didn't matter anymore. But this isn't the case, because we move now on to chapter 33 of Genesis, and the first verse of this is, "Now Jacob looked up and saw Esau coming, and 400 men with him." So if Esau had forgotten about the fact that Jacob had deceived him and treated him in this bad way that had caused this rift and this hurt, then why would he bring 400 men with him? His brother says he wants to be reconciled with him, and Esau turns up with 400 men. So does that sound like Esau trusted Jacob, that he just wanted to be reconciled with him? Or was he worried that he was coming with an army and he might attack him, and reconciliation wasn't his real intention at all? So it seems to me that, to be on the safe side, Esau turned up with 400 men. That's quite a lot of men, really. So it doesn't seem like he actually trusted Jacob at all. Now Jacob, already having recognised his identity as a deceiver, he looks up and he sees Esau with these 400 men. So what does he do? He divides his children up among his wives and maids and sends them ahead of him. So Esau, looking down at this, will see that there isn't an army coming, but actually the most vulnerable people. So he understands that Jacob is coming with a good intention to be reconciled, and he's not intending to attack him. Otherwise he would have sent his army first, wouldn't he? Not his wives and children. And Jacob is able to understand that Esau is suspicious of him because he understands that he's a deceiver, and this is what needed to happen before any real reconciliation could take place. So anyway, Esau sees this, and he runs out to meet him and embraces him and falls on his neck, kissing him. And then he asks him about all the people who were with him, his wives and children. And Esau's, Jacob has sent gifts, brought gifts as well for Esau, which you say in this account that you give of what took place, and that Esau just brushes this aside and says, oh no, it's unnecessary, like he's just forgotten about everything that happened in the past, even though he turned up with 400 men. Anyway, this is what Esau says about the gifts that Jacob has brought. I have enough, my brother, keep what you have for yourself. This is Genesis chapter 33 verse 9. And then Jacob said, no, please, if I find favour with you, then accept my present from my hand, for truly to see your face is like seeing the face of God, since you have received me with such favour. Well, where have we just heard the face of God? Well, it was in the previous chapter, the part of which I just read, where Jacob wrestled with the stranger all night, who turned out to be God, asked for a blessing. God said, what's your real name? Jacob says Yaakov, which means deceiver, and then God gives him a different name, Israel, Yisrael, which means he wrestles with God. And then the stranger, who is God, won't tell him his name, so Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, I have seen God face to face, and yet my life is preserved. So Peniel means face of God. And then Jacob says to Esau, seeing your face is like seeing the face of God. So these two events are clearly related. This is the way things are written down in the Hebrew scriptures, in the Torah. You can see that stories are related together by things like this. So there's the face of God in the wrestling with the stranger and the acknowledging of his true nature, and when he sees his brother again and they're reconciled, he says, seeing your face is like seeing the face of God. So I hope that's brought a bit more understanding of this event to you that took place, which you've misrepresented again in exactly the same way, like you can just brush all your evil deeds under the carpet. They don't matter anymore, and your victims have got no reason to be suspicious of you or suspicious of your motives at all, even when you're threatening to kill them and hurling insults at them to try and shut them up and destroy them and discredit them. So you're doing quite the opposite of Jacob, aren't you, really? So you're not behaving like Jacob. So don't expect me to behave like Esau. I suppose that's what I'm saying. Anyway, this is a direct quotation from you now. Finding this moment for reconciliation is truly a meeting with God. God's face seen in the face of another, who lets go of all resentment and blame, as if there really were no offence or rupture, no cause for lasting division. Well, when are you going to start acting like Jacob then? When are you going to say deceiver? When are you going to say slanderer? When are you going to say abuser? When are you going to say liar? When are you going to say murderer? When are you going to say these things? I haven't heard you say anything like it. I've heard you insulting me to try and shut me up and discredit me to other people. So don't be expecting me to be acting like Esau when you're not acting like Jacob. I have explained all of this to you before in another video. God's face seen. Finding this moment for reconciliation is truly a meeting with God. Well, meeting with you is meeting with Lucifer, not meeting with God. God's face seen in the face of another, who lets go of all resentment and blame, as if there were really no offence or rupture, no cause for lasting division. So if I tell you everything's alright that you did and it doesn't matter and let's brush it all under the carpet, then you're going to tell me that you see God's face in my face. Because I really don't care what you tell me. I don't care what you say, Rowan. You talk nothing but crap, so just don't waste your time. It's of no consequence to me whether you see God's face in my face or not, because you're nothing but a liar. I can't believe a single word that you say, and I've demonstrated over and over again all the lies that you tell, some lies that cause to death and destruction of property, and wars are very bad for the environment as well, let's not forget about that. So let's go of all resentment and blame as if there were no offence or rupture. Well, I don't know what you mean by resentment. I don't feel any resentment. You constantly accusing other people of feeling resentment. You do this quite often. You're in fact a very resentful person, and this is why you have to destroy anybody who makes you feel threatened. So don't be accusing me of being resentful, because quite frankly I'm not. I just think you're a lying, conniving scumbag, and I don't want anything to do with you, and I don't want to give you any credibility at all by associating myself with you, and I haven't heard you admitting all the lies that you've told, either about me or about events such as 9/11, which has led to war and death of 1 million people. So even if I was absolutely brimming with resentment, it just seems like small potatoes compared to all the things that you've been up to. So don't be criticising me. Just don't bother. Don't criticise me. Don't criticise anybody. You don't have any moral high ground. You've got no moral authority at all. You're not in a position to be criticising anybody. So don't bother criticising me, because I couldn't care less what you think or say about anything. And then, no cause for lasting division. God's face seen in the face of another who lets go of all resentment and blame, as if there really were no offence or rupture, no cause for lasting division. Well, Rowan, we've never been united, so how could we be divided? I'm not in communion with you, is the best way that I can put it, I suppose. I don't really want to be in communion with Lucifer, and you've sold your soul to Satan, and I don't trust you, and I think you're a scumbag, and I think you're just trying to manipulate me. I don't think there's any honesty or integrity in anything that you say. I've seen no evidence that you have any virtue, any moral values, or any real concern about anybody except yourself. You don't even care about your own children, which I've said before, because you're working to bring in a tyrannical government, and what kind of future would that be for your children and their families? An absolutely terrible future for them. So you don't even care about them, so why you'd care about anyone else, I really can't imagine. Anyway, I shall leave it there for now, but please contemplate this story again, because as usual you've misrepresented a story in the Bible. This is the second time you've done it to this story, and you've misrepresented it once again in exactly the same way, by not recognising what has to happen first before there can be reconciliation between the two brothers. So start wrestling with God, and start telling God your real identity. Start telling us all your real identity. Slanderer, murderer, abuser, propagandist, and so on. I could go on forever. Anyway, I won't go on forever, I'll leave it there. I probably will be seeing a priest this week, but I'll try not to seduce him, and I won't be seducing you anyway, even when I come to arrest you on Tuesday at St Mary le Strand in London, which is within walking distance of Victoria Coach Station, less than 2 miles away, so that's handy, isn't it? So There you are then. So you've got that to look forward to. But in the meantime, keep practising the Yorkshire puddings and try and remember what I've explained to you about this story and don't get it wrong again. Hasta la próxima.
Seeing again someone you never expected to see. Discovering that you've been given an utterly unexpected and undeserved chance of rebuilding what seemed broken forever. This can be a moment when we really discover what grace means, even what God means. In the biblical Genesis story, Jacob, who has defrauded his elder brother out of his inheritance, meets his brother once again. He's full of trepidation and plans to soften his brother's heart by lavishing gifts on him. But it turns out that there's no need. Esau brushes it aside, open-hearted and ready to forgive.
Jacob looked up, and there was Esau, coming with his 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the 2 female servants. He put the female servants and their children in front, Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph in the rear. He himself went on ahead and bowed down to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. But Esau ran to meet Jacob and embraced him. He threw his arms around his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Then Esau looked up and saw the women and children. "Who are these with you?" he asked. Jacob answered, "They are the children God has graciously given your servant." Then the female servants and their children approached and bowed down. Next, Leah and her children came and bowed down. Last of all came Joseph and Rachel, and they too bowed down. Esau asked, "What's the meaning of all these flocks and herds I met?" "To find favor in your eyes, my lord," he said. But Esau said, "I already have plenty, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself." "No, please," said Jacob. "If I have found favor in your eyes, accept this gift from me. For to see your face is like seeing the face of God, now that you have received me favorably."
Finding this moment for reconciliation is truly a meeting with God. God's face seen in the face of another who let